Hey guys, happy spring training. I know that we don't have school, so hopefully we're using our time wisely, being diligent in opening the AP review books, crash courses, collegeboard.com, something that gets you to review um, some of the past material we covered this year. Be faithful and disciplined as to review the stuff because you'll thank yourself later. Um, it took me a while to put together this lecture because I've been thinking about like all the different people and their contributions to society during this time. It's a lot of different new ideas that come out of this and how society will change. I also thought about like the upcoming lecture outlines of how to not just throw random facts at you guys, but kind of organize it so we can see what is happening in history. So this is talking about the time from the second half of the 19th century going into right up before World War One. How did society and ideas change in Europe? Okay, so fin de siècle is the term that means the end of the century. So we're coming to the end of the 19th century, going into the 20th century, and life is going to change a lot. Belle Époque is the French term that means beautiful era, and so this is really talking about the 1890s, okay, the very end of the 1800s, where the standard of living and people's lives in the industrialized regions are going to really drastically improve. And we talked about what really began this is the changes that came, the social effects that came from the Industrial Revolution. But after reforms and um, the second industrial revolution coming in, okay, the standard of living and how people lives overall is going to improve. And so after World War One, people are going to get all distraught and stuff, and then they're going to say, hey, you know what? We liked how life was, fin de siècle or Belle Époque, okay, the beautiful era. Um, different countries will have different terms. America will have its Gilded Age, and then you have the Victorian era with the British. But yes, pretty much this is for the worldview of Europeans by the French. Okay, so moving on. We're going to see in Northern Europe, Britain, France, Germany is going to have better living standards than in Southern Europe or Eastern Europe. And also the wages that people will make are going to go up. So people are going to make more money. The prices of food and all other consumer goods are going to go down. So the life is better for everyone. And so from that, we're going to see that their time that there is going to be available is going to open up because they are making more money. Okay. All right. So in Britain, okay, in Great Britain, wages doubled between 1850 and 1900. So in 50 years, the second half of the 19th century, wages are going to double. That means that as you take more money home in your pocket, this money can be spent on different things. A lot of times it's on clothing or even food. And so what's the most costliest food for people is meat. So meat consumption is going to increase. And so the fact that you have wages available or the fact that wages are increasing, it makes more leisure time available. So you have more leisure time because you don't have to work as hard because you're getting paid enough for it. And what do you do in your time? Well, you go and do something with it. You guys spend your money, and so consumption is thus going to increase. So people are going to get into sports. Okay, whether you are playing it or you're going to be a spectator, sports clubs are going to grow. So soccer, which is like football, as they call it, Europeans call it, rugby, bicycles, automobile races, track and field competitions. And as you see in this picture, there's going to be like a bicycle craze. People can start affording these types of means of transportation. And in the 1890s is where it's going to really go wild in Western Europe. Women also are going to participate in these sports clubs and own bicycles themselves. They are going to gradually abandon more restrictive clothing and, try to be part of this whole sports culture movement. So you guys did a sports DBQ, and one of the topics from this document is that sports mirrored the growth of nationalism. And so through European nations participating in sports, they become more aggressive during this time to show off their prestige and power. A lot of social Darwinists, which we talk about in more specific later, they're going to use this. You're going to use sports as a way to demonstrate superiority to between races. Okay, so I have money, I have time. Where can I go? Well, cafes and taverns, bars are places where people are going to spend their money and enjoy time and sit down and talk with other people and socialize. Department stores, this is where you're going to buy consumer goods, clothing, and the middle class is really going to thrive and see a lot of consumption here. And also in Paris, we're going to see people are going to be going to dance halls for dancing, concerts, for performances, and plays. And so thousands of people week by week are going to be in the city going to these performances. Okay, so within society, there's also an improvement in education. How does it improve? Well, the state is going to be more in control, and they're going to, before the education is dealt between the church and the state. And so in this time at the end of the 19th century, the state is going to be a lot more committed and controlling in this. So they're going to emphasize loyalty and service to the government and de-emphasize the importance of religion. And so, which means that society is becoming more secular. Okay, by 1900, we're going to see that England is going to institute laws that's requiring children ages 5 to 12 that are required to attend elementary school or primary school, and they're going to make education free. Okay, before this, up to this point, education wasn't very good. It was really only those who could afford it. You had a lot of child labor, and eventually, over time, reforms will bring where children are going to receive free education, and it's going to the level and quality of education is going to improve. Okay, in France, they're going to also pass their own laws called the Ferry laws, and this is requiring children ages 3 to 13 to attend schools, and schools are going to be free as well. So, what does this really mean for society? Well, we're going to see that if you go to school, right, you are learning specifically reading, writing, arithmetic, so the simple basics, and so literacy rates are going to increase. And throughout Europe, we're going to see a huge jump. Okay, now there's certain patterns and trends, of course. For men, they're going to have higher literacy rates than women. Those living in urban environment rather than rural, and also in Northern and Western Europe more than Southern and Eastern Europe. And this is all leading to urbanization, industrialization. It all starts from Great Britain and spreading out. Okay, what we're going to see is by 1900. Germany is going to have a 99% literacy rate. That is amazing. Okay, there are many countries today in 2013 that does not even have a literacy rate that is over 50%, let alone over 30%. Okay, Russia by 1900 is going to have a 25% literacy rate. So you can tell that they are very behind. Okay, and so girls. Oops, sorry. Let me go back. Girls are going to have less access to secondary education. It's kind of the pattern that boys do have the opportunity first. A lot of times families would have to pay for girls to gain education, and the power of education, as you can know now, and it was still back then, the education provides an opportunity, okay, of economic improvement. So you go to college, you get a degree, that increases your chances. In the same way, for girls, it's going to help them improve their economic status and also be more of a marriage prospect. Okay, all right, so I have these new inventions here. Okay, throughout this time, European society is going to experience the telephone, the invention of the automobile, the car, right, the gramophone, the radio, and motion pictures. That's great, that's fun to know, right? Society is modernizing. But what does this have to do? How is it significant to European history? So I thought about this, and I made a cool question. Okay, describe how these inventions corresponded to changes in society during the late 19th century. Consider the specific purposes of each invention and their impact on society. Okay, so think about that. I want you to answer that yourself. Challenge your brain. Okay, apply it to kind of the things we just talked about. Okay, so these inventions are going to be examples of the scientific progress that is coming through this time at the end of the 19th century. Okay, so pause the video, work on that, or make sure you go back and do this question because it's really important. But I'm going to move forward. Okay, so the scientific progress that's going on, the ideas and the methods, okay, are going to gain a lot of popularity and prestige. The public, the masses, are going to really buy in and follow a lot of these new discoveries. And to many, science is going to be pretty much like a religion. Like people are following it and seeing like what's the latest and greatest thing. So scientists and science itself is going to reflect the age of realpolitik. You know, the rise of realism after all the whole romanticism. Realism is going to take hold of science, and it's going to begin to impact how the worldviews are shaped of the European people. So we talked about how did science evolve? How did the scientist evolve? Well, we talked about the scientific revolution. This is the 16th and 17th century, 1500s, 1600s, and they're looking at the natural world with the natural laws. Okay. Secondly, then we have the Enlightenment that happened in the 18th century. Okay, with the 18th century, this will take the observations of the natural world and natural laws and apply it to society and politics and trying to solve, using reason to solve every type of problem in society. Okay, so the 18th century scientists, they were basically amateurs that were educated. Okay, they were very knowledgeable, but science still was a hobby during the 18th century. In the 19th century, where we are right now, okay, the state and industry are going to be more involved in promoting scientific research. And the reason why is because science has made itself clearly a factor, an impacting factor of how it applies on a practical level to technology, right? You put science, technology together, boom, industrialization, new invention, steam engine, right? And scientists are now going to go from a basically a hobby, amateur, knowledgeable role into a role that's more professional, and that's where that's their job, that's their profession, and they're going to work in hospitals, they're going to work in universities, they're going to work in the governments, and scientific journals are going to be beginning to be published. So the link between science and technology is going to improve the quality of life. And some of these things we're going to see that develop is how the medical advances and also the use of electric power. Okay, the first category we're going to talk about is the Bacterial Revolution with Louis Pasteur. So you guys took biology, okay, you learned about pasteurization, all that good stuff. And so Pasteur came up with the germ theory of disease, of how do people get sick? Germs. It's not just catching a cold, okay? So with germs, this is what bacteria is, right? This is where all that bad stuff needs to be fought off. There's good bacteria, bad bacteria. Pasteurization is basically the process of how to rid a substance of living organisms that causes like fermentation and growth of these bacteria. So how do you get rid of it? Well, if you heat up the liquid, then eventually it will kill the bacteria. And so this discovery obviously helps reduce food poisoning, and so that's why you have your milk that is pasteurized, your orange juice that's pasteurized, okay, because there was bacteria in it before. Then we have Joseph Lister. He developed the antiseptic principle in performing sterile surgeries. So surgeries were performed before him, and many times, right, you have an open wound, or you perform a surgery where you open up the human body, and a lot of times germs will get in and then there'll be an infection, and so many people would die from these infections, and it's not really because of the surgery, but it's the infection that came from the surgery. So diseases such as typhoid, typhus, cholera, yellow fever are now kind of under control because vaccines are going to be introduced and surgeries are more sterile, okay, it's clean. The significance of the Bacterial Revolution means that the death rate is going to be reduced and people are going to stay alive more, which means that with less people dying, population overall in Europe is going to increase. Okay, So other scientific developments, not just in biology, but you have chemistry. So the next person I want to introduce, some of you guys may know already, right? Who came up with the periodic table, Mr. Garrett Lim. If you have him as a teacher, he too is a handsome man. If you don't have him, try to request him. All right, but yes, Mr. Garrett Lim did not come up with the periodic table, although he knows it very well, extremely knowledgeable, right? But the guy who came up with it was Dmitri Mendeleev, Russian dude. The periodic table was made in 1869, and he began to arrange the elements according to their atomic weight. Okay, and so huge chemist, contributed to society. Because of him, you all take chem honors and hopefully chem AP sometime in your high school career. Next guy, Michael Faraday. His contribution, which was a huge experimental guy, was electromagnetism. So in the 1830s and 1840s, he is going to do a lot of tests and eventually is going to create the first dynamo, which is like a generator. And so what you can see here is that electric motors are going to be developed, where you're powering basically everything through electricity, so you can use lights and these types of street cars or trolley cars through electromagnetic science technology. Okay, how it all works you'll learn in science class. Here we go. Okay, so the social sciences. Auguste Comte, he is known as the father of sociology. He came up with this idea of positivism, which means that intellectual activity, what do you know? Knowledge is going to come in stages. Okay, so progress is going to come through stages, and humans are going to discover that a lot of these laws that govern nature is going to come through our senses. Yes, it's my fiance. Hold on. Hello?
Hey.
Hey. I'm in the middle of a lecture.
Okay.
What's up? All right, I'm back. Okay, so positivism. What do you know? Intellectual activity, okay, is going to come through stages. Humans are going to be able to obtain what is true knowledge based upon their senses and their experience of life through their senses. So it's not just what is imagined, what is interpreted, but clearly what are you gaining through your senses, and that is going to be the empirical evidence, more or less. Okay, so social scientists are going to help regulate society for the benefit of everyone else. And so Comte is believing that science is a huge proponent of how society can progress together, and it's through the study of science, social sciences, and so he's going to be pushing that experts should be the ones in charge and ruling because they are the most knowledgeable and they know what they're doing. Okay, Ivan Pavlov. You guys have ever heard of Pavlov's experiments with Pavlov's dogs, with the bell and the salivation and all that kind of stuff? So he's a Russian psychologist. He does the experimentation on many different types of animals, and really what he's coming down to is that animals and most likely humans can be conditioned to give a certain response or behavior based upon what you set them up with. Okay, so you can condition them every day, right? So you guys are conditioned, right? The bell rings. What do you think? I'm out of here. Yes, you are conditioned. And then he has other specific experiments in that too. Okay, next guy, Freud. Okay, Freud, important dude. He is one of the three intellectual giants of the 19th century. Okay, so in the 19th century, they said there's like three main guys. One, Karl Marx, we talked about him before, right? His ideas of communism, which is adapted upon socialism and more extreme. Okay, Marx, Freud, and Charles Darwin. Okay, so Freud, what does he believe? Well, In contrast to using reason and rationale for in the Enlightenment to solve everything, he believed that humans were, for the most part, irrational creatures, irrational beings, and that we humans, have a subconscious, right? Things subconsciously just come out, and this is what we call the id, and it was not subject to reason. It doesn't follow reason. It's just irrational and it's random. And so Freud is going to say that people don't really have control of themselves as much as they think that they do, and that they have a lot of these inner desires that just come out for some other reason. And then you have the Oedipus complex, which is basically sons kind of hate their dads indirectly, but they love their moms because they have this desire for them. Not that really important to go into detail. Take psych, that'd be more interesting. Okay, but really, what is he introducing? Is he begins the process of psychoanalysis. He's a founder of this, and he believes that patients would go through a lot of unhappy childhood experiences, which really affect them, to have certain weird upbringings, and they become kind of hysterical in some ways. And so some ways that he would kind of treat them is through hypnosis, and eventually through that time of sitting down with them and psychoanalyzing them, he can try to help the patient or the person understand where is their emotions and unhappiness, okay, coming from, okay, the origins of it. Where is it stemming from? All right, so we talked about Marx, Freud. Now we talk about Darwin. Okay, and many of you guys have heard of Darwin before. He's not a unheard of dude, right? Took biology, wrote the book on the origins of species by the means of natural selection. Went to the Galapagos Islands. That's where he looked at the birds and beaks feeding, right? Okay, so established the theory of evolution. Okay, Darwinism, and as a theory, he believed that all life gradually evolved over time from a common origin of ancestry, and it's been just a struggle for survival over time, and then those that were most adaptable survived. Okay, so his biological observations. Now, later on, we're going to see that religion's going to hear about this, and they're going to, or churches are going to hear about this, and they're going to start having a lot of resentment, and they're going to refute this, and because it says, you know what, in the book of Genesis, this is in contrast. So there's going to be some religious crisis in it. There's going to be a dude named Thomas Huxley. He's a zoologist. He's a comparative anatomist, and he's going to be a huge supporter of Darwin. He doesn't support every little detail, but his nickname is Darwin's Bulldog, right? So he's always going to be debating and supporting Darwin's ideas. Social Darwinism is going to be taking Darwin's theory of biology and apply it to society and to politics. Herbert Spencer is going to be the main guy that is going to apply Darwin's ideas. He believes in the survival of the fittest, which we always say natural selection, kind of the same thing. But these natural laws are going to dictate why there are rich people and why there are poor people and why there are successful people and why there are unsuccessful people in society. And also it's going to justify imperialism because the weaker natives, right, the weaker indigenous people are going to be exploited because they are just not fit in this world to survive and thrive. A lot of industrialists are going to use this to justify their wealth and how others are just struggling for subsistence, and they are eventually going to not last long enough. So Spencer's ideas are going to be supported most by the upper middle class peoples. Okay. All right, last thing. Last slide. Okay, new physics. All these physicists are going to win Nobel Peace Prizes. Wow, awesome. Okay, Marie Curie and her husband Pierre are going to discover several elements. One radioactive element is radium. That's in 1910. And then there's polonium, maybe because she's from Poland. Two elements, and she actually gains a Nobel Peace Prize in chemistry and physics. Only person to have two Nobel Peace Prizes in two sciences. Okay, and then we have some other names we got throughout there. Ernest Rutherford. He is the father of nuclear physics, and he begins to do a lot of experiments and looks at the atomic structure. He's able to split the atom in 1919, and as he's looking at the atomic structure, he noticed that there's things called protons, and then these are positively charged within the nucleus. I kind of remember this from chemistry. And there are these things called electrons, and they are like negatively charged things, and they kind of like go around the nucleus. Okay, and then we have another dude named Max Planck. He discovers he comes up with the quantum theory. The quantum theory, this is way over my head. It talks about subatomic energy. Okay, so from energy from the atoms is going to be emitted, so spread it out, dispersed in little spurts called quanta. It's not in a steady stream, but it's going to come out in spurts. So what does this show? It shows that a lot of laws that were governing the universe are now unpredictable. They had ideas and theories of natural laws that were like right? But really things are shifting now with these new discoveries. And so the foundations of physics before this are now being kind of turned upside down, and things are being changed. And atoms, the atomic structure or something, are stable, okay? And this is the building blocks of matter. Everything's broken down on the very microscopic atomic level into atoms. Which brings our last gentleman, Albert Einstein, as you guys know. Einstein, right, genius. 1905 comes up with the theory of relativity, and he's going to challenge a lot of traditional ideas that came from Isaac Newton. Okay, so Newtonian physics, we talked about during the scientific revolution. He's going to adapt it and change it and say that, you know what, time and space are not objective, but actually relative to the viewpoint of the observer, and only other things are constant, like the speed of light is constant. He is bringing this idea that this world is infinitely large, right? And at the same time, it is linked and connected to a very small and fast-moving subatomic world, that atoms are freaking going crazy, right? While the world is so vast and such a microscopic level. Okay, I didn't mean to end it. I had some last few things to say. Okay, so scientists at this point, at the end of the 19th century, are going to realize that they, because of all these new discoveries, know less about the universe than they actually did before. They had a lot of speculations, but a lot of things are changing their ideas, and so there's an element of uncertainty. Okay, there's a principle of uncertainty, and it's going to feed into a lot of pessimistic thought that Europeans will have at the point right before World War I. Okay, all right. So we covered realism in society and its impact on society, and also realism and its relation to science and intellectual thought. We're going to jump into art and literature in the next one. Okay, so spring training lecture number 1 complete.